Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. It is your inner pilot speaking. Today's flight. Today's episode would be an entrance into, I guess, the royalty of thoughts. All right. So the viewers need to look at the screen. I'm going to bring the notepad. I'm going to type some stuff. And let's get this going. So, a play on words. Thinking like a thin king. You know, I'm somebody who plays with language, plays with communication. And I'm going to show the viewers here pretty much I'm going to explain my views on thought, pretty much. So we have the idea of thinking, okay? Now, something I did, my mind saw this, separated the words, and saw the word thinking. Then I was like, okay, thinking like a thin king. See, dear viewers, now you can see kind of like how I built these titles. Now, what is the poetic significance? I've come here and I've said in the subtitle, so this is the title. And then for the subtitle, I've written here, why are there thoughts? Why are there thoughts? Another question that could be also asked is, what are thoughts? These are important questions. Why are there thoughts? What are thoughts? These are two important questions. So you see the title, Thinking Like a Thin King, play on words, but it's pointing to what are thoughts, why are there thoughts? Playfully, I can say, I mean, here's the thing. I'm that person in history who I am saying there's an old school and then there's a new school, okay? Old school, we had terms like, here, some people use thoughts. I'm going to read where that comes from. We had a term called qualia. We had a term called noumenon. Noumenon. It's actually a cool word. That's qualia, guys, not quail. Okay, thoughts, qualia. Why does this keep correcting it? Okay, qualia. Noumenon, I think noumenon spelled correctly. So thoughts, qualia, noumenon. Okay, this is what they would call it. Okay. And qualia was a suggestion to the inner realms, okay? Inner experience. And noumenon was also a pointer to inner experience. Noumenon is a term that I believe Immanuel Kant excuse me, guys. Immanuel Kant came up with the term noumenon and phenomenon. Phenomenon, what you see happening outside of you. Noumenon, what you see occurring inside of you. Qualia is a suggestion to what is happening inside of you. It's like another word by another philosopher suggesting the inner experience, right? And thoughts, right? And what thoughts are, you can say, content of inner experience. This is very important. thoughts are content. They come and go. They're not our inner realms only, right? Like you may think that you have a mind and that your mind's like your inner realms, but your mind is space. What's moving in it is considered as the inner realm. By the way, if there's anybody who's been listening to these talks and you have problems you think I can help you with, feel free to share it in the comment section. I consider that the purpose of human life is to experience the greatness of humanity. Once we have taken care of ourselves, we take care of others. Once we have taken care of others, we take care of the world. Once we have taken care of the world, we have become the world. So, before I talk about the new school and how I am envisioning we can acknowledge this idea of thoughts and imagination, is first I'm going to read for the viewers something about thought. The terms thought and thinking refer to a wide variety of psychological activities. In their most common sense, they are understood as conscious processes that can happen independently of sensory stimulation. What an incredible sentence. This includes various different mental processes, like considering an idea or proposition or judging it to be true. In this sense, memory and imagination are forms of thought, but perception is not. You see, it's a psychological activity, guys. I mean, that far is obvious. Some dude was like, what are thoughts? And some guy's like, yo, the brain's moving. It is a psychological activity, but it could be independent of stimulus. That's the important thing about it. So anyways, I'll read it here. In a more restricted sense, only the most paradigmatic cases are considered thought. These involve conscious processes that are conceptual or linguistic and sufficiently abstract, like judging, inferring, problem solving, and deliberating. Yeah, deliberating, judging, same thing. Sometimes the terms thought and thinking are understood in a very wide sense as referring to any form of mental process, conscious or unconscious. In the sense they may be used synonymously with the term mind. This usage is encountered, for example, in the Cartesian tradition, where minds are understood as thinking things, and in the cognitive sciences. Yeah, guys, when it comes to Descartes did one of the most incredible things for, I could say, modern knowledge, right? And he noticed that as if the mind is of another substance, as if the mind's in another dimension, as if the mind is independent to the body. It says a contrast, but this sense may include the restriction that such processes have to lead to intelligent behavior to be considered thought. A contrast sometimes found in the academic literature is that between thinking and feeling. In this context, thinking is associated with a sober, dispassionate, and a rational approach to its topic, while feeling involves a direct emotional engagement. In terms of thought and thinking, the terms thought and thinking can also be used to refer not to the mental processes themselves, but to mental states or systems of ideas brought about by these processes. In this sense, they are often synonymous with the term belief and its cognates, and may refer to the mental states which either belong to an individual or are common among a certain group of people. Discussions of thought in the academic literature often leave it implicit which sense of the term they have in mind. The word thought comes from Old English pot or geopot, from the stem of penkan, to conceive of, in the mind to consider. Okay. And guys, there's so many different types of thinking too. You know what? I'm going to go over it, but before that, I'm going to explain the new school. Actually, I'm going to explain this and then I'll go to the new school. Alright guys, I read the comment section. I don't really comprehend what's being said there. If there's a question, I can engage. Alright, back to the talk. Okay, so what I'm going to read for you, dear viewers, is this. Alright, the different types of theories of thinking. Okay, this is pretty long. I think it'll take me an hour to read all of it. But I'll go over the first sentence of each. Certain theories of thinking, right? Various theories of thinking have been proposed. They aim to capture the characteristic features of thinking. The theories listed here are not inclusive. It may be possible to combine some without leading to a contradiction. Platonism. According to Platonism, thinking is a spiritual activity in which Platonic forms and their interrelations are discerned and inspected. This activity is understood as a form of silent inner speech in which the soul talks to itself. Platonic forms are seen as universals that exist in a changeless realm different from the sensible world. Examples include the forms of goodness, beauty, unity, and sameness. On this view, the difficulty of thinking consists in being unable to grasp the Platonic forms and to distinguish them as the original from the mere imitations found in the sensory world. This means, for example, distinguishing beauty itself from the derivative images of beauty. One problem for this view is to explain how human beings can learn and think about Platonic forms belonging to a different realm. Guys, this is why I've been born. Plato himself tries to solve this problem through his theory of recollection, according to which the soul already was in contact with the Platonic forms before and is therefore able to remember what they are like. But this explanation depends on the various assumptions usually not accepted in contemporary thought. Guys, the Platonism is very close to my view. It's speaking about the Plato's world of forms. Different human beings are different in their experience of their inner realms. For me, I have had incredible geometrical experiences of myself as a geometrical entity moving in realities that are dehumanized. So in some sense, this Plato's world of form, it is real, and it is the suggestion that the content and the shapes that you find within your mind, they have journeyed from elsewhere. And so while human beings sought to seek a paradise beyond the earth, there were those who found the paradise on earth. Plato's world of forms is a realm of geometric perfection. It's a suggestion that a lot of geometry in this plane of existence has already been pre-designed in other dimensions, in ways where there is no time. So imagine somebody creating something in time and then somebody creating something outside of time, right? That person who creates something outside of time has a continuity for its invention that the person in time does not. So anyways, Plato's world of forms is very important. Why? Because it's suggesting that there is a purely geometrical dimension to reality. Like, it could be that we think we're like human beings, which has the multidimensionality of objective, subjective, and emotional dimensions, but we could just be pure geometrical phenomena. If somebody says, is there anybody who can testify, for the reality of the world of forms, Plato's world of forms, I'd be one of those people who I'd raise my hand. Alright, so that was Plato. Then we have Aristotelianism and conceptualism. Aristotelians hold that the mind is able to think about something by instantiating the essence of the object of thought. So while thinking about trees, the mind So while thinking about trees, the mind instantiates treeness. The instantiation does not happen in matter, as in the case for actual trees, but in mind. Though the universal essence instantiated in both cases is the same. In contrast to Platonism, these universals are not understood as Platonic forms existing in a changeless and eligible world. Instead, they only exist in the extent that they are instantiated. The mind learns to discriminate the universals through abstraction from experience. This explanation avoids various of the objections raised against Platonism. Conceptualism. So guys, Aristotelians, what they're pretty much doing is they're saying, all right, Plato, relax. Maybe it's not another dimension. Maybe the fact that we see these inner forms mentioned behind this world, it's as if our mind is creating that dimension. Something in these lines, I think. Conceptualism is closely related to Aristotelianism. It holds that thinking consists in mentally evoking concepts. Some of these concepts may be innate, but most have to be learned through abstraction from sense experience before they can be used in thought. This is not true. Let me tell you why. Because, I mean, it's kind of like you just need a basic alphabet of a list of thoughts, and then your brain is already smashing like sticks and stones trying to make a fire. Everything that you know and you have considered conscious in your mind is actually coagulating all the time. Right? People don't realize this, but I notice it. Let me tell you what it's like. It's like noticing that your mind is like a phone and it has multiple applications. Okay? And then imagine you suddenly notice by turning off one application, your attention to the other applications is more. Here it says it has been argued against these views that they have problems in accounting for the logical form of thought. For example, to think that it will either rain or snow, it is not sufficient to instantiate the essence of rain and snow or to evoke the corresponding concepts. The reason for this is that the disjunctive relation between the rain and the snow is not captured this way. Another problem shared by these propositions is the difficulty of giving a satisfying account of how essences or concepts are learned by the mind through abstraction. Let me tell you, as a human being with 31 laps around the sun, how I've experienced the human mind or one human's mind, and what I can share about its implementation, its activation. So you see, dear viewers, we are conditioned to think that we're like this biochemical mechanism. We take how we are being something so for granted that we have actually emotionally are running it rather than consciously realizing how it's being run. Okay? How the inner realms activate, it's with rhythm. This is something that so far I've been reading this, it's like I haven't seen it, but there is a rhythm in the inner realms. And once your mind finds an inner rhythm, the thoughts you don't have to put energy for. So for example, me giving these talks here, I'm pretty much like redlining the engine, and then, you know, I'm just pushing the car, and as the engine's working, it goes on its own. It upholds a rhythm, and the idea is that if you can trust a state of mind that is a verb, not a noun, you can tap into rhythms anytime. All those people who have been wondering how to enter the flow state can only be entered if you have selfless trust in the complete moment. If you can trust them how the moment will happen, even if you're not an ideological or objective or subjective self. There's another theory for thinking. It says it's called inner speech theory. Inner speech theories claim that thinking is a form of inner speech. This view is sometimes termed psychological nominalism. It states that thinking involves silently evoking words and connecting them to form mental sentences. Guys, there's a bizarre truth to this. I discovered something which I talked about years ago. How if somebody says a sentence and then you start saying it slower and slower and with a lower volume, you will eventually get to a point where you don't know if your voice box is moving or if you're thinking. So to be honest, the discrimination between how we are thinking and how would I say it? Thinking and speaking are the same when you reach a certain when there is no sound, pretty much. Here it says, the knowledge a person has of their thoughts can be explained as a form of overhearing one's own silent monologue. 3 central aspects are often ascribed to inner speech. It is in an important sense similar to hearing sounds. It involves the use of language, and it constitutes a motor plan that could be used for actual speech. Okay, so what are the 3? So the central aspects are often ascribed to inner. It is an important sense similar to hearing sounds, so it's important, your attention's on it. It involves the use of language, and it constitutes a motor plan that could be used for actual speech. Okay, yeah, so what it means is that it's like a verb. It has language, which means it has shape and inner image, and it has importance. This connection to language is supported by the fact that thinking is often accompanied by muscle activity in the speech organs. Yeah, when it comes to the voice box. This activity may facilitate thinking in certain, it doesn't say voice box here, but muscle activity in the speech organs. This activity may facilitate thinking in certain cases, but it is not necessary for it in general. According to some accounts, thinking happens not in a regular language like English or French, but has its own type of language with the corresponding symbols of syntax. This theory is known as the language of thought hypothesis. Guys, this language of thought hypothesis, one thing they're getting wrong, it's not a language of thought, it's a language of space. When it comes to the inner realms, you are a viewer, and you can view things from angles that in the outer realms you can't. For example, right now I'm sitting in the driver's seat of my car using Starbucks coffee shop Wi-Fi to give this talk, right? It's a suggestion that the inner realms gives us an ability to access probable angles to the moment that we're not physically existing in. What's going on is that a real being is using abstract means to extend its own understanding of reality. We are actually one of the most smartest and incredible processes in the nature of a cosmic reality. And this process is one of recognizing limitations and realizing the purpose is acknowledged. You find your purpose in this life when you realize what your limitations are, because then there is something to go beyond. And the limitation for our species, it is its unnecessary belief in its own inefficient outcomes, which we don't know. The past is past, the present waits, but the future. You know, people may not believe it. You know, there's something like in the Sistine Chapel, there's this famous artwork called The Creation of Adam. And so Adam is sitting on earth, you know, with his elbow on his knee, just chilling, and he has no clue. But on the other side of the veil, you see God and the angels trying to touch Adam's finger, right? From one point, it's as if the divine is far away or inaccessible and invisible. But from another lens, the divine is reaching you. It's as if there are advanced communicators from the other side of the veil of sensory perception trying to break through. And so in your inner realms, if you, like for a decade now, I've been pretty much, my inner realms have been moving faster than my outer realms. Which is another way of saying I've been living multiple lifetimes in a day. By noticing that in a single moment, every archetype that has been known to my consciousness is present. The army of familiarity is here. You know, the human being may be alone, you know, like imagine sometimes in my science fiction novel, okay, I'm going to share a story of it, that chapter of it that I've never shared before actually. I'll share it, you know. Pretty much what it is in the year 5025, right, there's this very incredible, this is something I wrote, it's from an unpublished science fiction novel called The Messenger of Giants. Anyone interested in working with me, reach out, you know, for business inquiries. But aside from that, I'm going to tell you the story. and it's a huge book, but I'm just telling you a little bit of. So there's a scene, there's a main character, his name is the word R-A and then the word soul, Rasoul. Okay, Ra and then soul, right? So there's this guy named Rasoul, the main character. It's set in the year 5025. The world has completely gone through revolutions and transformations, and there are so many different types of beings living in the world, and the world is divided between terms I've created called the traditionalists and the futurists. The traditionalists are beings in the year 5025 who still believe in time. They believe in linear time. But the traditionalists, the futurists, are those who are in some sense timeless. They include AI programs, extraterrestrials that have, let's say, discovered their eternal being. Do you know what I'm saying? In some sense, transcendental beings and all of this, right? So the scene I want to tell you of my story is there's this main character named Rasoul, and he has a shamanic, tribal, religious robot, android buddy named Robot, that is like a spiritual shaman. Okay, one of those ayahuasca shamans, right? But he's a robot called Justicar Nova. And so Justicar Nova and Rasoul, a chapter ends called the ocean on the mountain peak. And so what happens is these two guys are walking down this mountain in this sci-fi universe I've created. Two black Iron Man suit looking uniforms with angelic wings that are just made of light beams, white light beams. They appear out of nowhere. They land in front of them. They open up, and Rasoul and Justicar Nova, both of them enter these Iron Man suits. The Iron Man suits close, and the Iron Man suits take him to the Sky City Council. And so in the story, it's so remarkable because you saw, if it was a movie, you'd see like this flat horizontal line of clouds in the sky, and suddenly two suits appear, pop out of the clouds, and then the two suits open up. Rasoul and Justicar Nova start walking on the clouds as if they're solid, and the two suits swish down, go back down into the clouds and disappear. And Justicar Nova and Rasoul, they walk into the Sky City Council, and there's suddenly stairs, and they enter, and a building appears on the clouds. So they go into the Sky City Council, and the Sky City Council, in this sci-fi book I've written, there's a council called, the whole government is called the Enlightened Society, and the leaders, those people who are part of the Enlightened Society, are glowing, just white glowing beings. They're just light. They're literally like humanoid light beings. They don't have details of face and body. They're just like light figures, humanoid light figures. So Rasoul goes in there, ahead of the Enlightened Society, is sitting on like some sort of throne council place. Rasoul goes in there, and in the center of the council, there's this dolphin in this kind of aquarium suit, and this dolphin is giving a speech as a representative of all the animal life in the animal realms, pretty much, right? But anyways, so what happens is, I'm still trying to build up to that point. So Rasoul is in the Sky City Council, right? And suddenly, everybody's been called to the Sky City Council because they've noticed in outer space 9 giants. These 9 giants, glowing giants of light, are flying towards Earth, right? And these Enlightened Society and all the beings in the universe, in some sense, have come to be like, what's going on here? Why have these ancient spirits of the universe appeared? Do you know? And long story short, Rasoul, the main character, he's a character who I've designed him in a way where everybody in the book already knows him somehow. Do you know? And at the end of the book, I'll reveal why. But what it is so Rasoul is there in the Sky City Council with Justicar Nova. Captain Fino finishes giving his speech, and then they share with Rasoul and Justicar Nova the image of the 9, what do you call it? 9 flying giants. Sorry guys, let me drink something. Rasoul gets a vision that he needs to go meet these these giants. Sorry guys, I messed up the story. Okay, Rasul goes there. He sits in the he sits cross-legged in the center of the place, council. He raises his hand in the air, and he just turns his hand into a fist. There is a flash, and everybody in the Sky City Council gets the inner vision of the 9 giants. I think this is how I wrote it. The viewers will one day see how I've written it. But there's an idea like this. So long story short, Rasul gets on this ship. He feels like he has to quickly get on this spacecraft and go towards these 9 giants, right? And if I remember correctly, one of the giants appears suddenly in front of Earth. Rasul goes there. He's in the spaceship with a pilot or something. The Sky City Council is watching him. And as he gets near the giant's hand starts going through the spaceship. Imagine this giant ethereal hand. And it avoids the pilot, and the pilot looks back and sees Rasul is not in the spaceship, as if the giant took Rasul from the spaceship. And so when the giant takes Rasul through the spaceship, I've written that chapter as if Rasul is having an out-of-body experience the whole time. And so Rasul says that this giant tests humanity and throws Rasul into this planet where there's a civil war between these 2 species, and one of them is blue and one of them is yellow. And so the moment Rasul, like this sort of sphere of consciousness, is thrown in the middle of this battlefield, you see these 2 giant, imagine this battlefield of 2 different extraterrestrials, yellow and blue, fighting, and suddenly 2 giant spheres, one yellow and blue, run out of the battlefield, roll through the battlefield to come in some sense and capture Rasul. And so the way I've written it is that Rasul is out of his body, and these 2 leaders of these 2 extraterrestrial species fighting on this planet decide to play tug of war, and Rasul experiences his biological, his manifest existence. In some sense, he experiences like 1,000,000 deaths in 1 second. Do you know? And he's outside of his body, just seeing in some sense physical. It's pretty much a depiction of the battle of the Asuras and the Devas in my sci-fi, right? The battle between immortal beings and eternal beings. Okay, there's been a battle like this in transcendental, let's say, history, mystical history. So that was the thing, right? Where he was thrown in a place where he was being torn. I shared this, and I think, like, I missed the point now, but. So anyways, guys, that was a bit of sci-fi for you. You know, I have decided that I will fascinate the species. I'm working on certain sci-fi books right now. I think the species is going to be impressed. Why? Because our eyes need to open to how great the future is. This is how the legends of advanced civilizations begin. It begins with a species realizing it can be advanced. You know, a part of me, you know, I once went to this psychic, okay? Like, my family went to this psychic, and this psychic said something in the lines of like, you're here to be a pilot, you know, of the future generations, or something like that, right? And I remember in school, I didn't like my teachers, you know. Not that I didn't like them, like, do you know what I'm saying? The teachers weren't really teachers. This is what I understand, you know. I've gone through high school, I've gone through college, and I'm telling you, the teachers were not real teachers. They were just pretty much androids could do the jobs of teachers now, right? Because the teacher is being a freaking teacher. It's locked into the damn archetype of what it thinks a teacher has to be, not what it thinks an advanced human has to be. You know, so many generations of human beings are born, and you know what breaks? That has never existed before. But what do? We clothe our mind with the past and try to copy and try to go into the good graces of a past that doesn't exist anymore, you know? When will the species try to go into the good graces of the future? When will we realize that divinity is the future? Why else is the divine here? Do you know all those religious people praying? Why are you praying? You're praying so something good happens in the future. We have been indirectly as a species living for the future. Our mind is the access point to the future. So, there's more to read, guys. I'm gonna read, holy shit, there's like 7 more. Okay, here, I'll just read. Okay, no, the theories of thinking are close. There's language and thought hypothesis. I think I read this. There are various theories about the relation between language and thought. One prominent version in contemporary philosophy is called the language of thought hypothesis. It states that thinking happens in the medium of mental language. This language, often referred to as mentalese, is similar to regular languages in various respects. It is composed of words that are connected to each other in syntactic ways to form sentences. Mentalese? Who the fuck? You know, it's a good attempt. Whoever came up with the name mentalese, like, I'd give the person a high five, but we need to change that word. Mentalese. It's like a language. We have like Chinese and then mentalese. Like, I would say that it's the language of sight. This is the difference. There is a language of shape, but then there's a language of space. And the language of space is how you're present before your personality made a mistake. Whatever, I'll read it. Why do I have a voice? This language, often referred to as mentalese, is similar to regular languages in various respects. It is composed of words that are connected to each other in syntax. I read that. This claim does not merely rest on any intuitive analogy between language and thought. Instead, it provides a clear definition of the features a representational system has to embody in order to have a linguistic structure. On the level of syntax, the representational system has to possess 2 types of representations: atomic and compound representations. Atomic representations are basic, whereas compound representations are constituted by other compound representations or by other atomic representations. On the level of semantics, the semantic content or the meaning of the compound representations should depend on the semantic content. Okay. Yeah, so it has simple levels, complex levels, and so one of the conditions is that its complexity needs to fulfill its simpler levels, I guess. I don't know. The language of thought hypothesis states that the same is true for thinking in general. This would mean that thought is composed of certain atomic representational constituents that can be combined as described above. Apart from this abstract characterization, no further concrete claims are made about how human thought is implemented by the brain, or which other similarities to natural language it has. Okay, guys, this is too much, and if I just read this, there's associationism. So that was the language and thought hypothesis. Associationism, important view in the empirist tradition, has been associationism, the view that thinking consists in the succession of ideas or images. This succession is seen as being governed by, we can't ignore it. Thinking consists in behavioral dispositions to engage in certain publicly observable behavior as a reaction to particular external stimuli. Computationalist theories of thinking, often found in the cognitive sciences, understand thinking as a form of information processing. Guys, check this out. Then it says the types of thinking. There's entertaining, judging, and reasoning. Then there is so what I was reading before were theories of thinking, and I'll go over them quickly right now, just reading them. Platonism, Aristotelianism, and conceptualism, that's the second one. Inner speech theory, language and thought hypothesis, that's the fourth one. Associationism, fifth one. Behaviorism, computationalism. And then for the types of thinking, that means, imagine thinking is an ability, so how many different ways can you activate it? It's like you entertaining, judging, and reasoning, concept formation, problem solving, deliberation, and decision. Deliberation is an important form of practical thinking. It aims at formulating possible courses of action and assessing their value by considering the reasons for and against them. Oh, okay, so maybe I had a different interpretation of deliberation. This involves foresight to anticipate what might happen. Based on this foresight, different courses of action can be formulated in order to influence what will happen. Decisions are an important part of deliberation. And then episodic memory and imagination. When thinking is understood in a wide sense, it includes both episodic memory and imagination. In episodic memory, events one experienced in the past are relived. Yeah. Pretty much remembering is episodic memory. Unconscious thought. Conscious thought, here it says, conscious thought is the... okay guys, something about... I'm going to read about the before about episodic memory and imagination. But this does not constitute an exact copy of the original experience, since the episodic memory involves additional aspects and information not present in the original experience. Exactly. You know what this means? This means that if I was to remember what I ate yesterday, that would not be the exact memory of yesterday. That would be an episodic memory, because me remembering yesterday from now is all the things that are present now are influencing how I'm remembering that. Do you see what I'm saying? So this thing about episodic memory is very true and very important. Another way I've termed it in my talks is I've said experience tunneling. We're tunneling through the brain self-simulations throughout the day. So anyways, that's it for now. I think I read enough about thinking. Right? I think I read enough that a thinking is probably like overweight now. By the way, if you're tuning in, if the viewers want to, add excitement to the speaker's, moment, share where in the world you're listening from. As I drink my iced cappuccino, guys, quick intermission. Okay. Actually, guys, just a quick intermission. Okay. So, now I've read, what the past has said, and now I can very easily speak about what I want to say. It's important that the viewers look at the screen. So this is Mr. Within. So the question I'm trying to answer here is something in the lines of like, what do we do? So it would be something in the sense of like, I would come here and say, what kind of relationship is the human species going to have with thought? So let me tell you something. I was raised in a generation where people called it thought. They still do. They think that they called it thinking, but this is the new school, and this is what this is pretty much my, if I'm known something for something in philosophy, it would probably be this in the future. Mr. Within's inner, and here I could say outer and inner realmism. So my strategy is like, man, these people, like the back in the day, they came and told us our mind is a thought. They came and told you you're a thought, and because you thought you're a thought, it stopped there, right? You were content. Somebody came and said you're a thought from now, okay? And you were like, okay. Okay. But this is my revolutionary contribution here. That I noticed imagination, they say it's unreal, flawed argument. It's only 1/4 unreal. Imagination is 3/4 real if you consider it from the Aristotelian causes. And imagination, they have duped you. It's not like the word imagination is old school, guys. Old school terms are like, imagination, even mind. These are ancient terms. Now, what I'm saying is, instead of imagination, it would be like imagination became, this is the huge thing. This is what I'm trying to do in this lifetime. Imagination became, check this out, the inner realms. Bam! This is the main thing, guys. And now I want you to imagine how much of a more efficient system it is to, instead of calling it your imagination, instead of calling it your imagination, imagine calling it your inner realms, okay? Imagine you're a parent. Okay, I'm not a parent, but imagine you're a parent and your child comes home from school, okay? And you ask your young child, hey, how was school today? And the young child is quiet, and the young child says, it was okay, nothing happened, And then the parent's like, why is this kid so quiet? Usually the kid's energetic. So the parent says, what happened in school today, right? And the son's like, nothing happened. See someone, they're smiling, but you suddenly realize like they're upset in their inner realms. And what the inner realm is our internal version of reality. Right? Check this out. The World Health Organization was given some ridiculous statistic in the sense of like 70% of the species is depressed. Like, I don't know how they even got that statistic, right? And then I was like, but what is being depressed? What is it though? Right? And I realized we are depressed by our own lack of effort to be responsible for how the context of the world is up to us to decide as well. Do you understand? You can choose what character of what story you are. Do you know that's why we have minds? This is really the magic of the mind. It elevates us to fiction, and in fiction we can move in ways we couldn't in non-fiction. And so, it's like, somebody having the playful ego in Zen, they say, what do you call it? It's like in Zen Buddhism, right? The disciple would meditate and the disciple would suddenly be like, yo, I was Buddha in a past life, right? The disciple would suddenly identify with the archetype or valence of Buddha. With that position, subjective position. The person would think they're Buddha in their past life, and they would go to their Zen master, guru, and they would be like, Zen master, guess what? Your disciple is Buddha. And the Zen master is like, hey man, I've heard this from 1,000 disciples, kill the Buddha. And this was a hilarious thing the Zen masters would say, meaning that your mind, when you actually imagine your mind is like a treasure box and like a gift, and you're trying to open it, but when you open your mind doesn't want you to open it. Your mind mind doesn't want you to know that you are its true authority. Because if your mind knows that you are its true authority, all those beings that are interdimensionally living through you can't. Do you see? This is why certain humanity, it's not just outer realm physical things, right? There is something. This is why I'm telling people honesty is an interdimensional defense mechanism. It's an interdimensional safe journey. Do you know? That means it's like some people are like, yo, why are you so honest in this world? It's like, buddy, I have no choice. We don't know. It's an unknown world. You want me to be artificial and fake in a place that we don't even know what it is? Do you know? It's like we don't have time. We don't have time to be something we're not. Do you see? Because the moment passes and we wonder who lived the day. Did I live the day? Or was there something else? Did a thought live the day? Do you know what I'm saying? And you know what's going to happen? Let me tell you where the world is taking the human species. The world is taking the human species to a realization that it has to team up. It has to team up. That means a level, the egos of 8 billion creatures, a level of it has to break down, and they have to be like, okay, vertically we were each competing, but horizontally we have to unite certain dimensions, right? And so what it is that if there was excellent communication, there could be so many efficient communities. And do you understand what it is? It's going to be like this, where somebody builds something and then generations pass. People come and use it. Nobody thinks about another way to redesign it. And then after generations, a child is born that doesn't like how the world is. And that child is gifted with an ability to see a different version of it. You know? So, if you adopt whoever you are, if you want to somehow help me out in this lifetime, start using the terms inner realms and outer realms. You know, when somebody calls you, if somebody asks you, are you spiritual, are you religious, are you secular, you know, the answer would be that in my outer realms, you know, I'm a physical entity, physical reality makes sense. In the inner realms, subjective reality, abstract reality makes sense. And that which is aware, which the ancients would call it the presence beyond your personality. This is one of the greatest gifts that can be received in this lifetime. And it is a gift that a seed that has been in the soil and received the light can understand. So what it means is that in this world, advanced energy finds a place where it can implement. So what it is the more mistakes humanity makes, the more advanced beings actually arrive. But anyways, this idea of the inner realms and realizing that your mind is like a copy-paste photoshopped version of the outer realms over the inner realms. And the free will is the photoshopper. So, if there was a thinking in front of me and the thinking was like, what is thinking? You know, what is thinking, Mr. Within? I would say, dear King, you who have reached the peak of subjective status, you who have attained victory over your kingdom, the only victory now remains is the victory over the self. Okay, this is something that the greatest conquerors understood. Even Marcus Aurelius in his meditations, which were his private notes for himself, do you know? See, the cool thing about life is when you realize it's not just physical, then you'll be like, whoa, so there's a non-physical way I can behave in the moment. And then you wonder what is the most non-physical thing that leads to behavior, and it's attitude. And attitude comes from the context of the world you have. And both extreme materialism and extreme immaterialism are dangerous. Do you know? Because pretty much the extremes are emotionless or emotion locked. Let me tell you a story. This is a story that's like from 1,000 years ago, and evidently there was a king, and this king gets mad cow disease. Okay, he goes insane. He goes berserk. He goes insane, and pretty much the king of this kingdom, right? Suddenly one day the councilman and everybody comes and they're like, "How you doing, king?" And the king is on his four limbs, and the king is saying, "I'm a cow. Kill me, slaughter me. I'm a cow." Imagine the king of a kingdom. Imagine you're like that bishop, or not bishop, or like the right hand man of the king, and one day you come and see, right? Imagine you're the best friend of the king, and you come and see that the king is acting like a cow. Okay? And so it's like the mad cow disease or something. Some insanity. Okay? So they call the wisest person in the land. And if I remember correctly, the man's name was Abu ibn Sina. Abu ibn Sina, I think. I don't know. I don't remember his exact name, but he was this very wise man. And so they go call this wise man, and this wise man comes in front of the king, and they see, and the king's right-hand man or whatever comes and says, "We've tried to give the king his medicine. We've tried to get the king to do it, but the king acts like a cow and keeps saying, 'Slaughter me, slaughter me, slaughter me.'" Because that was something culturally they would do to cows and animals back in the day. People don't understand. Like nowadays, there is remnants of ancient ritualism still lingering, but back in the day, it was intense. Even at Buddha's time, it was even way more crazier, right? It was as if everybody was attempting insane methods towards the ultimate sanity. That's the Brahmanism. That was the ritualism era, So this king is going insane. This wise man comes into the king's palace, and all the people who've tried to feed the king food, the king doesn't eat the food, right? And everybody has gone to the king and they're like, "You're a king. Remember yourself. You're not a freaking cow." Even the king's daughter is like, "Dad, you're not a cow. You're a king. Stop being a cow." And so what happens in this story, dear viewers, is that this guy is smart. And so when everybody went up to the king and they were like, "You're a king, stop acting like a cow," this guy went up and said, "Hey cow, how's it going?" And the cow was quiet and was like, "It's going good. Are you here to slaughter me?" And then the guy looked at the king for a moment and was like, "Yeah, I'm here to slaughter you, but you're such a thin king that I can't. You're such a thin cow that I can't, in some sense, slaughter you. You're too thin for me to slaughter," right? And the king is like, "What do you mean I'm too thin? I'm a cow. You have to slaughter me." And then this guy's like, "No, you got to eat more food and then I'll slaughter you." And he's even like, let's say he dresses like a butcher or something too, right? And so the king is like, "Okay, but then you're gonna butcher me, right?" And the guys, like the sage, is like, "Yeah, man, yeah, cow, I'm gonna butcher you. Just eat your food," right? And the king, just like a cow, eats his food, and his medicine is secretly in the food. And so the king is cured, and suddenly can't remember any of it or something, right? And then, the councilman goes and gives a huge, bag of gold coins to the sage, It's like, "Yo, man, thanks. This nation owes you a debt that, only the people in this room know," right? And this sage leaves the room. People don't understand this, right? Some of the most powerful people in society, some of the most solidified, egotistical elite positions, they are actually in parallels to the opposite dimension of the most selfless beings. So what it is there has been this poetic algorithm of mystic sages scolding and educating kings. Okay, because if you were to think who can educate a king, it would be somebody who is a king of their mind, a king of they're not just a king of the outer realms. They're not just holding a giant club in their hand and attaining respect through intimidation, which seems to be much of the strategy of human beings on earth. You see what it is? When you are great, because you instantaneously know that greatness, it cannot be taken away. You see, it's like knowing something instantaneously is equivalent to being it. Okay, I don't know what happened, when I said Thin King, the viewers went from 4 to 1. Anyways, this is Mr. Within's relationship with thoughts. Pretty much, I log into the conscious waking state throughout the day. Everything is directly experiential. I'm a conscious presence. It's kind of like my mind is like the glow of a candle flame. My mind is the candle flame. My consciousness to the world is like the glow of the candle flame. And my brain and body is the wick of the candle. And so every person is like a candle, and we're here for like 100 years. We're a 100-year-old candle. And for me, for example, 31 years of that candle has been melted. And this is the light I have been capable of generating. You see what it is? Our minds are moving faster than our bodies, and this is why the human consciousness is struggling with discipline, and emotional gratification seems to be a release and a tolerance and a sort of acceptance of the inner movement. Okay? If somebody asks me, Mr. Within, what is the difference between the logos? What is the difference between thinking? What is the difference between the inner realms and divinity? What's going on here for a human being? And the way I would say it, if you have the capability of being selfless, you're going to realize there is 4 modalities of reality. I'm this person who I have made this bold claim to all the philosophers of the future generations who may challenge me or may not, but I am saying all ideological possibilities have 4 outcomes. There are literally 4 ways things can be in reality. So I'm going to explain these 4, I'm going to write it down so the viewers can see it. So this is a system I've designed. Here, Mr. Within's system called Ring of the Absent Heaven. This is something I'm very proud of. It's one of the greatest discoveries of my life. Ring of the Absent Heaven. Now, what does the Ring of the Absent Heaven suggest? It suggests 4 symbols. 0, 1, 2, and I'll write infinity here because I don't have the infinity symbol, but it's the infinity symbol, okay? These are the 4 outcomes. So what does 0 mean? 0 means, so first consider that what is reality? We have start, which equals Brahman. Back in the day, they would see the god Brahman. Anything that was created in this realm was due to the god Brahman in a polytheistic narrative. So Brahman is pretty much, I perceive Brahman as the archetype of starting. And then there is maintaining, and this is the archetype of Vishnu. And I think I gave a talk, or I wrote down to give it a talk, where it was like, don't you wish you knew Vishnu? And so there's a start, there's a maintaining, and then there's an end. And for the end, this is the archetype of Shiva. Right? So what it is it's a process of things starting, things maintaining, and things ending. Okay, these are three important archetypes. We see these cycles in life. An incredible, for example, realization of a Shiva moment, if like a Hindu was watching Attack on Titan, that scene where Mikasa notices that death has always been in the world and suddenly her real self activates, like in season 1 of Attack on Titan, that would be as if like suddenly Shiva awakened, you know, the presence of Shiva awakened in Mikasa in Attack on Titan, for example. So this is something irrelevant now, not irrelevant, but this is something to just consider, that there's the start maintaining an end. Okay, now the ring of the absent heaven, so the ring of the absent heaven, this is where there are 4 states pretty much to acknowledge. Okay, okay, so what the 0 state means is that in this life, when we look at reality, we notice emptiness. So it would be like reality started from nothing and returns to nothing. Reality for that's the void. Okay, oh, I forgot to write this. This is the void. This is the singular. This is the dual. And this is the infinite. So the void is reality started from nothing, and even though in the middle of it it's something, so this could be like beginning, middle, okay, so one way of looking at reality is like truth is nothing and everything returns to nothing. One way is reality started as a singularity and ends as a singularity. You know what that means? That means even though I'm giving all these talks and I'm trying to, for example, build an advanced civilization on Earth, it doesn't matter, because at the end of it, everybody's experience would, it pretty much, the singular dimension implies that everything is everything. That's what it means. That means we think we're all separate souls having different experiences, but from the singular, here I'll call it dimension, so reality started as a singularity and ends as a singularity. Everything started from a singular point and returns to a singular point. Every religious person believes this. Every religious person says, everything started from God, created everything, and everything returns to God, right? So this is the singular dimension, right? The void dimension and the dual dimension. Okay, this is very interesting because this is where we are now. The dual dimension means reality is dual and reality started as a duality and either stayed and returns, started as a duality and returns to a duality. There we go. And the infinite, bam, the infinite reality. This is so beautiful, guys. This is too soon. This is when the concept of infinity infuses with human psychology. I'll give that 600 years from now. Reality had no beginning, no middle, and no end. And certain sages like Meister Eckhart, he perceived it as that. The infinite is very different. The infinite would be like the moment, like an example of infinite psychology, an infinite psyche would be like the psychology of an immortal being, for example. Or maybe somebody who's realized consciousness is immaterial. So, check this out. When it comes to the zero, those people who believe that things started from the void and returns to the void, we call them secular. Those people who, in some sense, believe in the singular dimension, we call them religious. Those people who live in the dual dimension, because our body and the cosmos is in a dualistic format, like it's kind of unavoidable that everybody has a dualistic component to their being. But I would say those who believe in duality are pretty much those who are waking up to infinity. That means, I've said this, singularity is the mother of duality, and duality is the father of infinity. And infinity is the mother of the void. And the void is the father of the singularity. So these four, 0, 1 to infinity, in every moment I can see this, okay? And in this lifetime, I've kind of trained, like, you know, imagine like back in the day, a person, a young kid, taking a wooden stick and practicing like sword fighting in the forest with hitting trees and whatever. In this lifetime, in these 31 years, especially the last decade, I've really experienced these different states. And I've experienced it to a point that I wanted to understand them to a way that I could even share them, right? Because you see, there's different levels of how, like, it's kind of strange. It's like noticing in your inner realms, there's a multidimensional acknowledgement of reality. So it means that if you have a perception on a singular version of reality, that singular version can multiply. And it's this suggestion that in front of our eyes, we appear as these physical beings, but behind our eyes, we appear to ourselves as a multidimensional being. And human consciousness is not just living in a physical reality, because when you sleep at night, your body is in your bed, right, existing, but your mind creates a body for you. You experience that daydream or that night dream sense of self, right? So you experience yourself in that dream. You wake up and you are influenced by the dream. This is why people, like, if they have a nightmare, if they have a good dream, they wake up and their energy levels are different. Why? The fact that we can remember our dreams and our dreams influence our life is a suggestion that human intelligence is getting influenced by a non-physical dimension. So if we are a being that can receive a non-physical dimension, how have we been? It's, imagine like a king of the kingdom standing at the front gate and somebody's like, "What are you doing here, king?" You know, and the king's like, "Wait a minute, I'm a king? I'm not a castle guard?" Do you know? It's the appreciation of the presence of being, dear viewers. You know, life happens once. You know, this moment happens once. This talk I'm giving, you know, the days after this moment, I will never be able to give it in the same way. So where does this take us? What can I say? Let's say instead of believing in ideology, what if we could verify truth directly and experientially. Why are thoughts important? Why are thoughts there? Because the physical moment was not enough, simply said. It wasn't enough that we knew ourselves as an object. We had to name ourselves, and then we had personalities. And now, when it's like the materialist is believing in a noun, and the immaterialist is believing in a verb. And if you think about the intelligence of the world as a moving verb, it's as if it's very easy to kind of define somebody's body, but you cannot define their mind. Their mind is where the inner witness is led to. So when the physical moment was not enough, what does this mean? So this means that I'll write it, Mr. Within's phases of evolution. So something I say is that there was an unconscious world. And then there was an unconscious self. And then there was a conscious self. And then there was a conscious world. So what does this mean? And oh my God. Okay. All right. So, the unconscious world was a point in the world where there was no creatures, just celestial objects and stuff in space moving. This is very important. When we come to the unconscious self, body of a creature plus limbs of a creature emerge, and a creature roams a physical landscape without being conscious of what it is. So what it is that the earliest phases of evolution were not per se conscious. They were just force pouring out, like a cup reaching the brim. Do you know like the water in a cup reaching the brim of the cup and then overpouring, right? So what it is the unconscious self is that weird phase in nature where the body appeared, like the creaturehood appeared, which I think this is still it could also be like an extraterrestrial mystery creaturehood. Do you know? But anyways, what it is like the body was moving without knowing it's a body and without knowing there's a world. Just unconscious self in an unconscious world. Okay? Then we have something very spectacular happen, and there's different views on how this happened. Some people say the creature noticed its reflection in ice, noticed its reflection in a pond, noticed its shadows, noticed its third person view of its hands, noticed through pain and pleasure experiences, you know, that it was a different, like it was separate than the environment, do you know? And so what ended up happening is this unconscious, this biological mechanism kept moving so unconsciously that the environment started sculpting it and organizing it. And so at some point there came the conscious self, where we became aware that we are an unconscious object in an unconscious physical world. Right? So what I mean by this, I shouldn't say unconscious physical world, but what I'm saying is we noticed we're being an unconscious self in an unconscious world, and that's the conscious self. Okay, so pretty much at this point there's only, here I'll write it, only objects in space. Okay, at this point still only objects moving in space. In conscious self, a subject and an object notices it is a subject. That is noticing an objective world. Do you understand? So it's just like it was stuff in space, then stuff in space had a unique shape where it could interact with other stuff in space, and then it became conscious and began to develop and cultivate for itself a subjective position, right? Like if somebody comes and says like, hey man, you got a great personality, I'll be like, thanks bro, but did you know my personality doesn't exist? And what I mean by that is it exists as much as fiction does. But the thing is, fiction exists. Any inner event, any inner experience or event of imagination is 3/4 real. What that means is you can see it, it can influence you as an object, as a shape of vision, but you cannot touch it. That means the content of our mind has shape, but doesn't have substance. The inner realms are visible, but they are intangible. And the conscious world, so this is an object notices a subject that is noticing an objective world. Okay, so this is human consciousness. This is where we are. Okay, this is like 2023. Okay, and where we are heading is, so a point about this would be 2023 human beings lived lives to themselves in which they were an object, they were an objective system, a subjective system, and an emotional system at once. And let me tell you why we have emotions. We have emotions because the world behind our eyes is different than the world in front of our eyes. Your inner realms and outer realms are different. And this is very important, because have you noticed why does the child cry when you take away the toy? Because that toy is being a part of that child's mind in that moment. It's being a part of the interrelationship of experience in the present for that child. When that factor leaves, the child is noticing unfamiliarity. And I think evolutionarily, unfamiliarity we associate with pain, we associate with danger or whatever. This is why when somebody does something awkward or does something strange, everybody moves away. Why? Because we don't know how to behave to that which we don't know how to familiarize ourselves with. And this is why I'm saying the advanced beings on earth will have a patience of eternal beings. Like literally they will like advanced communicators are like in their inner realms, they have the patience of an immortal or eternal being. Like they have timeless patience. Why? Because reality is more than a character in a story of time. It's an experience of multiple ways the whole moment is present. Those human beings that attained objective and subjective success and even emotional success were now left wondering what reality could be beyond states of balanced movement So what it means is, imagine you're someone in this life and you do everything right, okay? And you're living the best physical life, you're living the best subjective life, inner life, right? And at some point you're like, yo man, I've attained the victory, I've become victorious in this realm. I've conquered the outer realms, the objective realms, the subjective realms. not the inner realms, but I'm saying, like, it's like the person is objectively successful, subjectively successful in regards to status recognition and whatnot. And then the person's like, what now? What do I do when I have reached my own archetype of perfection, or the top of my own hierarchy? And this is when the humility of the gods comes in. Okay, Rama, the sage in India, was once asked by this guy who came up to him, and he's like, Rama, I'm a busy guy, I got work, why do we have to work so hard for enlightenment too, man? Like, what is this, right? Why do we have to put an effort for enlightenment? And then Rama says, you don't understand how good you have it, right? In lesser dimensions, beings are in unconscious loops of reality where they can't even ask the question of what is their true nature. And in higher dimensions, the gods are being given so many offerings that they don't need to even question. So it's like the lesser dimensions are too imperfect to notice their true nature, and the higher dimensions are too perfect to notice there's more to their nature. Do you understand? In Vedic thought, and especially in ancient texts like the Mahabharata, this great epic, gods come down to earth to talk to Rishi Vyasa. That means as if there were beings back in the day where, even though they were on earth, they had celestial camaraderie. They were known from elsewhere, by elsewhere, And so what I think is going on in 2023 is that human beings are reaching the top of the hierarchy, and then they're wondering, what is it about though? And let me tell you what's going on. The moment you succeed, something that many who are victorious don't do is they don't look at the defeated. Because the strange thing about Earth is that it's one species. Musketeers, they were like one for all and all for one. There will come that moment where we will honor our individual positions and we will honor our collective position. And this sort of songs of the advanced civilization, these rhythms, these great winds, these inner storms behind the eyes of great individuals will happen. And what will happen is you're going to see, O humanity, the great revolutions from behind your eyes that will revolutionize your outer realms. And it is coming. Do you see? It's as if this voice is the beginning. I am like the bannerman. Do you know? I am like the scout bannerman. For the advanced civilization and the advanced humanity. They're all coming. They're all going to, that means there are going to be advanced beings that will come from the outer realms to earth, and there will be advanced beings who from the inner realms will remember themselves on earth. And when you realize your presence is not made of dirt, that even if you're religious, what God created, God imbued with an essence of itself. Do you see what is behind man's eyes is not just nothing. It is that which has been gifted everything. You have been gifted a world to access. What greater gift? And so, to all the kings and queens, to all the timelines, parallel realities, and all states of history, to all living archetypes and interdimensional possibilities, the human species has reached a point where it is capable to attempt and be fascinated to see its most advanced self in this life before it transitions. O pilots of the human experience, O entities that are influencing the human species in this universal sector, greatness of the authority of the victorious future generations. The inhuman past may no longer interfere with the human present. It is now time for the pure humanity, all beings alive in this universal sector, run towards the advanced civilization. For when our eyes become the sky, we have been our destination. Earth is in the heavens. The heavens didn't go anywhere. God didn't go anywhere. The origin of reality never went anywhere. And when mankind awakens to archetypes of its infinite birthright, we are not here to see the periodic table, disassemble. We are here to see the greatest liftoff platform. So use your human life to see how far the eyes of your species can open. And if you are an authority on this earth, then perhaps you have bowed to the inconceivable before your birth. It's all for the species, guys. What else can we do? It's like, imagine you're someone, I don't have kids, right? But I was like, okay, I still care for the future generations, What else is there to do on this earth, It's like after every romance of the past and present has been experienced, the only romance left is with the future. The greatness of the world is reminding us it's within us. So many different types of human experiences are being had in this moment. It's just remarkable, So many people think knowledge can be compared. You cannot compare anybody that has knowledge. Why? Because the world is too big, and you don't know what people see. This is what I've learned, There came a time in my life where I was like apologizing to the whole world that in some sense that I had the arrogance to consider enemies in this life. Like, it's so ridiculous after some point. You see, it's just a species breathing in the void. It's this fragile force, but it has great potential. And guys, I realized something. Mr.Within is a suggestion that what is experiencing the past and the present through common sense can only be the future. The consciousness is future. And this is what I'm gonna, establish a school of thought here. Mr.Within would say that consciousness is futurism. So consciousness is futurism. Futurism is a type of consciousness, or I would say the soul is the potential of itself in the future, experiencing how it's happening now. Because what else could be experiencing the present? Like, if you're in the present, you're like, how do I know this based on the past? But if you, from the present, are noticing the past, that means you're being an intelligence that is noticing the present and the past at the same time. So what is that that's noticing? So the unknown witness is our future self. End of discussion. Your soul is your future. And so when these yogis wanted to, these poor souls, I shouldn't say poor souls, incredible human beings, of course. Some of the greatest human beings. They were the glowing ones. The ancient yogis, Or they would say Sanskrit is the language of the glowing ones. Very poetic, very beautiful. And so what can I say? When will humanity realize? If nobody was here, we would be the last person on earth. We are privileged to be in the presence of others, regardless of if they are good or evil. But the idea of good and evil is the idea of vision. Human beings are not good and evil. Do you know what I'm saying? They're just creatures of perception. Based on, it's like the perception they consume becomes the perception that consumes them, right? For me, I was like, okay, if an idea is gonna bite into me, do you know, at least I'm going to choose it to be the greatest idea. And the greatest idea, of course, is the inconceivable source of being. But beyond that idea, the secondary level after that, to me, is the potential of the greatest source of being, which is the greatest creation, which is another sense of saying that if there was a truth beyond this realm that had invented mankind, it had also invented mankind's greatness. That it's as if the world is acquainting us. The world is like a hotel concierge, you know, being like, sir, do you need another towel? Anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this episode is helpful. In the comments, share, subscribe, like, and as a comment in the chat section, write what you think thoughts are. What do you think thoughts are? Why do we have thoughts? Why are there thoughts? And in some sense, wonder if a thought is a thought. I'm someone saying that what I thought was a thought was just a self-simulation in the moment. It's actually many self-simulations. You know what it is? It's like our physical body appears. It's as if like one body, you wake up and you go to sleep and the body's being the same. But the brain is in every moment accessing new angles, re-simulating itself. So really what's going on is we're living multiple subjective lives throughout the day. And we are piloting between our inner and outer life expressionism. You know, for me, somebody who prays, that's inner expression. You know, it's as if they found a moment where they can be alone with the truth of the world and bow to it. Bow to that. That means, think about it this way. What are the options? We either enter imagine the sensory perception of the sensory veil was a portal, and there was a portal beyond this dimension. What are the options? With what attitude do we want to enter this portal? Do we want to enter another universe as if we are like this arrogant force trying to conquer things? Or do we want to enter the world as if we are befriending those who cannot see as far as us? You see, that's the greatness of higher dimensional intelligence. Because they trust each other, they become each other, and they become each other's ability. But on Earth, because we're physical creatures, and every person for now has, let's say, one natural mind, one natural body. Right now, people's minds are separate. Like, you cannot go into another person's body and experience it through their eyes, right? But in dimensions where physical format is the secondary position, so what it means is there's some states of being where life is actually not physical, it's just space. You're being space. But you realize you can go live inside your own creation as an inconceivable being. So it's like imagine, it's kind of like Hadith Qudsi that in the Sufi tradition they acknowledge, which is this sort of ancient saying that says something in the lines of this sort of like they consider it as sort of divine saying, where it's like from the point of view of God, and God is like, you know, it's like the impression is like God is saying, I was unknown, and so I created the world to be known, as if all of manifestation and world is here so an inconceivable being can realize itself. It can trust itself. It's as if civilizations exist, manifestation exists, species exists, and this might be a bizarre thing for me to say, and maybe something that only God can judge only through my own heart, right? But it's this view that God does not trust itself, so it has to test itself. Because if God trusted itself, there would be no need for a test. Do you see? That means I wondered in the Abrahamic tradition, from the theological lens, why is it that God doesn't just say to the fallen angel, like to the angel that rebels, like, no, you're wrong, I'm right. Like, why doesn't God do that? Why does God give its companion a privilege to prove itself? Because really, it's kind of like Adam and Eve were caught in like a discussion between an angel and a God. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if the angel didn't want to prove anything, nothing would have happened. So it's like an angel's ego that caused man to fall. Do you know? And an angel is the consideration of the divine will. So it's another way of saying that there was no mistake. It had to happen. Because what we thought was an angel was actually like the puppet, was a puppet of God. Do you know? Was being puppeteered by God. You see, the thing about the idea of God is that who's living in this world? Are we living here, or is God living here? Right? Are we the causal position, or is God the causal position? Is an inconceivable dimension the causal position of this conceivable dimension? Or is a conceivable dimension trying to conceive the inconceivable? What's going on? Right? Because the theists and atheists, you know, they're playing this game where they're both like shouting at mirrors. Right? Imagine in front of the atheist you put a mirror, and imagine in front of the theist you put a mirror, like the movie Face Off, and that's how these two guys, their debates are. Do you know? To finish us off, what I'm writing here, the conscious world, this is in the future, and it would be when consciousness discovers that its individual body and the world body, as a matter of speech, are inseparable. So you think you are just in the human body, but the human body is in the world's body. So when you realize that you are part of an intelligence of a universal orchestration, then you begin realizing the instrument that your DNA is and the melody you're here to play. This world is waiting for your greatness, and so are the future generations. Why else are you here? To get to see how advanced here is. The advanced humanity arrives the moment in the inner realms that an advanced world is found. For all that is left is for a civilization to rise. That's the game. We are here to raise our civilization from ignorance into in some sense, interstellar divine clarity. The cosmos is alive, and it's watching. Rise, mankind, rise. Thanks for listening. Namaste.